At Starbound, we tell stories the human way, not with artificial voices or AI garbage. What's HFY without humanity? Subscribe to keep it that way. I'm Daniel Pierce, and I'm going to be your narrator. Now, let's begin. Director Boros of the Myriad Amalgamate viewed the universe as a meticulously organized ledger, and his talent for balancing its accounts was legendary. He specialized in aggressive acquisitions, hostile takeovers that left systems stripped and compliant. From his command throne of polished black tektite, he surveyed the main holographic display of the bridge, a space that mirrored his own acquisitive philosophy, a monument to function with intersecting planes of gunmetal gray and muted indirect lighting. His executive analyst, a perpetually fretful being named Peter, held a data slate aloft. The device's projected screen shimmered with amber warnings. "Director," Peter began, his vocalizations a low thrum of anxiety that always made the articulated plates of Boros' jaw grind together. "This signal originates from Sector 34 Gamma, designated Sol. The asset in waiting is the third planet. According to the Consolidated Threat Index, it is heavily flagged." Boros ran a multi-jointed finger over the cool surface of his throne aboard the capital ship, the Asset Collector. "Flagged by whom, Peter? Competitors?"
Multiple governing bodies, Director. The file is voluminous."
Peter's throat membranes contracted with a dry, clicking sound.
"The Tenebrian merchants' ledger refer to the species as the bone knitters, a colloquialism for their illogical biological tenacity. One annexed report details a specimen surviving atmospheric friction heating without a vehicle, subsequent to a high orbital platform failure."
Boros waved a dismissive hand. "Hyperbole. A scare tactic to ward off rivals for a potential market. The Lumina Enclave made similar claims about the Orion Spur Push, Peter. They called the inhabitants Void Ghost or some other superstitious drivel. We liquidated their primary holdings in a single standard rotation. This acquisition will proceed along the same profitable trajectory."
"The Lumina Enclave's navigational charts," Peter persisted, his digits skittering across the slate, "simply label the entire system as the Garden of Endless Fangs. They assert the dominant species cultivates apex predators for amusement and companionship. Their atmospheric entry probes reported a biosphere in a state of continuous, violent chemical and kinetic reaction."
"Charming," Boros rumbled, a sound like shifting bedrock. He leaned forward, his massive frame eclipsing the star charts projected behind him. "And the signal they transmitted, the one that brought this garden to our attention?"
"It is a rudimentary, Director, a repeating audio and foundational arrhythmic sequence."
Peter activated the playback. A clear, cheerful, and utterly unremarkable voice echoed on the bridge.
"Hello."
Boros listened to it once, then again.
"Hello."
He produced a deep, booming laugh that caused the junior officers to flinch at their stations. "Legends and ghost stories, Peter, propagated by timid rivals to frighten us away from a world so naive it broadcast an open invitation to the wolves. They are inviting us. It's a preemptive surrender from a species that just discovered radio waves. They're begging for a takeover."
"But, Director,"
Peter protested weakly,
"the energy signal of the broadcast, it's unrefined, but the power behind it is substantial, and the Terran exclusionary understanding."
"Is an unwritten rule for cowards," Boros roared, rising from his throne. "The Amalgamate does not deal in superstition. We deal in assets and liabilities. This planet is an untapped asset ripe for liquidation. Prepare the fleet. We will make first contact amalgamate style. I anticipate a swift and highly profitable transaction.
Peter bowed his head, his antennae drooping in resignation. He had presented the data. The director had made his assessment. The ledger, in Boros's mind, was already balanced in their favor. Damon Cinder Wells was applying the final touches to the ridiculously juvenile shark-toothed grin on the nose of his experimental fighter when the summons came. He floated in zero gravity of the orbital hangar, a 20th century rock anthem composed of 90% distorted guitar rattling through his helmet speakers. His craft, the XF-99 Spitfire, was less a vehicle and more a cockpit strapped to 3 oversized engines, surrounded by a collection of weapons hardpoints that violated at least a dozen safety regulations. He wielded a high-pressure aerosol can with intense focus. "Wells, your artistic endeavors are concluded." The voice of General Lena Marin sliced through the music with the crisp authority of shattering ice. It originated from the Deep Earth Command Bunker, the Anvil, buried in the Rockies, but it always sounded as if she were standing directly behind him, silently assessing his life's trajectory. Damon thumbed his comms link. "Just applying the requisite tactical markings, General. Psychological warfare is a significant component of any engagement. Reserve your psychology. We have an unidentified contact, one vessel, non-terrestrial design, descending on an arrogant trajectory over the North Atlantic. Their projected destination appears to be the airspace over New York City." Damon shoved the can into a magnetic holster in his flight suit and propelled himself into the Spitfire's cockpit. The canopy hissed shut and the internal displays flickered to life around him, bathing him in a cool blue light. "Just one? Are they lost?" "They're confident," Marin replied. A new voice, crackling with frenetic energy and the distinct buzz of a caffeine overdose, joined the channel. "They're about to be confidently disassembled at a molecular level." Dr. Rena Ibarra chirped. "General, the SOCOR array is aligned. I've piggybacked its targeting system onto Damon's avionics. He paints the target. I pull the trigger. It's a simple feedback loop."
Dr. Ibarra calls it simple, Wells. That means the odds of it tearing a hole in space-time are non-zero.
Marin said, her tone utterly deadpan.
"Her project designation for the system is Sunny Side Up. Light 'em up, Wells. Deliver our official response to their unannounced visit."
Damon grinned, his hands moving over the controls in a blur. His right hand toggled 3 switches in sequence while his left traced a glowing circuit path across the main screen, shunting power from inertial dampeners to the primary thrusters. The Spitfire shot out of the hangar bay like a magnetically propelled slug, its engine screaming defiance at the silent vacuum. Below him, Earth was a perfect blue and white marble. Approaching it was a vessel shaped like a polished stiletto, a design of such elegant menace it was almost beautiful. It moved with a lazy grace that broadcast its absolute superiority.
"All right, beautiful,"
Damon murmured, lining up his targeting reticle.
"Time to say hello back."
Damon locked onto the alien scout's vector. The targeting computer chirped its confirmation as a thin, coherent light beam painted the myriad ship's hull. The flight data streamed across the globe in less than a second. In geosynchronous orbit, the SOCOR array, a continent-spanning network of mirrors designed to beam clean energy to Earth's power grids, began to move. For a structure the size of a small nation, it pivoted with the unnerving speed of a stalking predator. "Recalibrating the array's gyros with the magnetic couplers from the asteroid mining division,"
Rena's voice squealed with pure, unadulterated scientific glee.
"She turns on a dime now, General. Who needs reaction wheels when you have repurposed ore haulers?"
"Fire, Doctor," Marin's voice commanded a clipped final order.
"Targeting data is live,"
Rena shouted over the comm.
"My predictive algorithms are compensating for the 0.24-second signal lag between Damon's paint and our position. Firing on projected trajectory now."
A roaring column of incandescent rage lanced across the Gulf, less a focused beam and more a solar flare on a leash. A torrent of concentrated sunlight focused to a razor's edge crossed the void.
Aboard the Myriad scout ship, The pilot barely had time to register the proximity alert before his advanced energy shields flared to an incredible brightness. The shields were designed to repel plasma bolts and particle beams, the conventional weapons of galactic warfare. They had no established defense against being struck with the literal, focused, unholy power of a star. The shield shimmered, warped, and then shattered like a pane of sugar glass. The solar lance struck the hull. The exotic alloy, forged to withstand the pressures of deep space, didn't melt. It flash vaporized. The interior of the stiletto-shaped ship became a superheated plasma furnace for a fraction of a second. From his cockpit, Damon watched the enemy vessel tumble, crippled and glowing a furious cherry red. Its elegant lines obliterated. It began its long, silent fall into the Atlantic, trailing smoke and molten metal. One moment, it was a symbol of alien power. The next, it was just another meteor. Reyna's triumphant cackle filled the comm channel.
Title validated! Earth is scary! Its infrastructure is a death ray, and we say hello with the power of the sun! Take notes, Galaxy!
Damon let out a long, slow breath, adrenaline singing in his veins. "Well, General," he said, banking the Spitfire back toward the hangar, "I think they received the message." Aboard the asset collector, Director Boros watched the scout ship's feed dissolve into a screaming storm of static. The tech-type bridge was rendered utterly silent, save for the hum of the life support systems. The junior officers stared at the blank screen, their expressions a mixture of shock and confusion. Boros's amusement, so palpable moments before, curdled into something raw and volatile. Peter, clutching his data slate like a holy text, dared to whisper, "Director, their energy output is anomalous. It exceeds all known military-grade platforms in this quadrant. The signature matches that of a G-type main sequence star." Boros's massive fist smashed down on a console, cracking the crystalline surface. The sound was a gunshot in the still room.
A power plant!
He bellowed, his voice shaking the very deck plates. His cold, corporate demeanor was gone, stripped away to reveal the brutal conqueror beneath.
They attacked my ship with their infrastructure!
The sheer, baffling audacity of the act was an insult far greater than any declaration of war. These beings, who he had dismissed as naive, hadn't met his advance with a military vessel. They hadn't transmitted a diplomatic protest. They had swatted his multi-billion credit scout ship out of the sky with a glorified solar panel.
They think this is a game.
Boros snarled, his eyes sweeping across his terrified bridge crew. The mask of the CEO was gone. This was the conqueror who had pacified the Regalian uprising by cracking their primary moon. He felt his facial plates grind with a pressure that radiated into his skull. He stabbed a claw at the main tactical display, which showed the blue-green marble of Earth.
No more, Mr. Nice Guy. No more surgical strikes. Deploy the ground forces, all of them. Burn their cities, level their infrastructure. I want every inhabitant of that mudball to comprehend the cost of doing business with Director Boros. I want their leader's score polished and on my desk by the end of their planetary rotation.
The myriad amalgamates dropships descended through the atmosphere like a rain of black iron. They were heavily armored, bristling with plasma cannons, and crewed by veteran soldiers who had crushed rebellions on 100 worlds. They expected to encounter scattered resistance from projectile weapons and disorganized militias. They were unprepared for London. A myriad ground patrol, its soldiers' energy shields shimmering in the drizzling rain, advanced cautiously down a narrow cobblestone street. Their tactical officer, monitoring from orbit, saw 2 red double-decker buses turn the corners at either end of the street, blocking their path.
He registered them as civilian transports, obsolete, irrelevant. He failed to register the remote control antennae hastily welded to their roofs, or the fact that their interiors were packed to the windows with several tons of ammonium nitrate fertilizer and fuel oil.
Director,
the Myriad tactical officer aboard the asset collector reported, his voice strained with disbelief as he watched the drone feed.
Our ground team is pinned. All analysts are classifying the incoming weapon systems as improvised vehicular incendiaries. But the locals, their open channel communications are calling it the number 19 to hell.
The buses accelerated, their engines roaring. The patrol opened fire, plasma bolts splashing uselessly against their thick steel. Then the buses detonated. The resulting fireballs scoured the street clean, leaving nothing but blackened brick and the faint, shimmering residue of overloaded energy shields. A Myriad squad moving through the Khan el-Khali market found themselves swarmed. They were not assailed by soldiers, but by hundreds of civilian delivery drones. They were small, quadrotor contraptions, utterly harmless in design. Each one, however, had been modified. High-intensity laser pointers scavenged from university laboratories and concert venues were zip-tied to their frames, all aimed at the Myriad soldiers' sensitive optic sensors. The aliens were blinded by 1,000 dancing green and red dots. Simultaneously, the drone's tiny speakers, designed for pleasant customer service chimes, blared a deafeningly distorted and bass-boosted version of a 21st century pop song on a torturous loop. Disoriented, blinded, and acoustically assaulted, the Myriad squad stumbled blindly into a carefully prepared ambush laid by the Egyptian army, armed with decidedly low-tech but brutally effective heavy machine guns and rocket-propelled grenades. The report to Boros was even more humiliating.
Acoustic irritants and photonic disruption, Director. Our elite soldiers were defeated by discordant music and pocket lights.
Across the globe, the story repeated with terrifying, insane variations. In the American Midwest, an armored column was obliterated not by tanks or aircraft, but by a fleet of 50 remote-controlled combine harvesters, their sharpened threshers churning through an alien alloy with horrifying ease. In the Himalayas, a mountain outpost was crushed under an avalanche triggered by synchronized chanting and massive ancient horns, a form of sonic warfare so archaic it defied classification. Myriad soldiers found themselves entangled and woven from repurposed bridge suspension cables or trapped in urban canyons flooded with millions of gallons of industrial soap foam. The humans were not fighting a war. They were orchestrating a planet-wide, weaponized mental breakdown. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, in the hastily recommissioned and massively upgraded facility known as the Anvil, Dr. Rena Ibarra was having the time of her life. She was a whirlwind of caffeine and chaotic energy, darting between holographic displays in a command center that looked less like a military bunker and more like a mad scientist workshop after a hurricane. Half-eaten trays of rations and empty energy drink cans littered every available surface. An aide rushed to General Marin, his face pale.
General, we've lost contact with the entire 7th Armored Division outside Shanghai. The Myriad column, it just rolled right over them.
For a fraction of a second, the iron control of Marin's features faltered. A flash of profound loss crossed her face before her stoic mask slammed back into place. She gave a single, curt nod.
Their sacrifice bought Dr. Ibarra the time she needed. What's next?
Rena, seamlessly oblivious, shouted from her nest of monitors.
Okay, people, I have a Myriad heavy weapons platoon moving through the Tokyo subway system. They think they're being clever, using the underground tunnels to bypass the service-level chaos.
She cackled, a sound of pure, joyous mayhem.
Reroute all available power from the Ginza district grid, bypass the safeties on the Cyodome substation, and zap! Electrify the third rail of the Odo line.
A screen flared to life, showing a grainy security camera feed.
The alien vehicle's sleek hover tanks suddenly convulsed in a massive shower of blue sparks, their anti-gravity systems shorting out spectacularly. They crashed to the tunnel floor, immobile and helpless.
Ooh, that's a bingo!
Rena shouted, pumping a fist in the air.
Next, we have a column trying to use the sewer system in Paris.
Cute. She spun to another console. Engineering, I want you to open the primary floodgates in the scene. All of them. Let's give our guests a traditional Parisian welcome. And by that, I mean a few million tons of river water. Go!
Another aide approached Marin, looking bewildered.
General, we're getting reports from civilian resistance cells. They're coordinating attacks using cascading infoglyphs.
Marin took a slow sip of her tea.
Are they effective? Shockingly so, ma'am. A picture of a cat playing the piano is apparently the signal to detonate improvised explosive devices in Rome. A dancing cartoon animal means ambush in progress in Sydney.
Marin allowed the faintest hint of a smile to touch her lips.
Dr. Ibarra's work, I presume. Let the chaos reign. The myriad plan of war. They have no concept of weaponized absurdity.
A heavily armored myriad column, the vanguard of the assault on Shanghai, advanced to the glittering, glass-strewn ruins of the financial district. Their energy shields shimmered like heat haze, effortlessly deflecting the missiles and heavy cannon fire from the Earth Defense Force positions.
Rena, they're shrugging off everything I've got up here.
Damon's voice crackled from the cockpit of the Spitfire as he strafed the column to little effect.
These shields are the real deal. They're hovering about 20 meters up to get a better firing angle on our ground teams. It's like throwing rocks at a fortress.
Rena's voice came back, practically vibrating with a manic new idea.
Well, that's because you're thinking in terms of energy, Damon. Their shields are rated for plasma, for lasers, for things that go pew-pew. They're absolutely, positively not rated for 10,000 tons of scrap metal moving a Mach 1.
A pause, then her voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper.
Let's see them parry a freight train.
10 kilometers away, an EDF ground team had already received their insane orders. They were at the main terminal for the Shanghai Maglev, the fastest commercial train in the world. Using plasma cutters, they welded the carriages together and piled them high with steel debris from collapsed skyscrapers. Then, in the control room, an engineer bypassed every single safety governor. Most importantly, he disabled the inertial dampeners.
Train is loaded, Doctor,
the team leader reported, his voice tight with a mixture of fear and excitement.
We are clear of the platform.
Launch it,
Rena commanded. With a low hum, the massive train lifted a centimeter off its track. Then, with a surge of electromagnetic power that caused the lights in the entire district to flicker, it launched. There was no roar of engines, no scream of friction, just a silent, terrifying acceleration. It became a blur, a massive, silently kinetic battering ram hurtling down the elevated track. Aboard the asset collector, the myriad tactical officers saw the energy surge.
Director, detecting a massive power spike along the city's transit grid. A vehicle is accelerating towards our column's position.
The column commander on the ground got the warning a second too late. His soldiers looked up from the EDF positions they were suppressing to see the silent, impossible shape of the maglev train bearing down on them. It was on its elevated track at their exact altitude on a direct intercept course with the middle of their formation. Their shields flared, designed to stop a missile, not an object with the kinetic energy of a small asteroid. The impact was utterly silent from Damon's cockpit view. The train hit the column and disintegrated, along with the myriad tanks. One moment, there was a disciplined formation of alien war machines. The next, a spectacular, silent explosion of twisted metal, shattered armor, and vaporized components filled the canyon between the skyscrapers. A perfect, brutal lesson in Newtonian physics. Damon let out a low whistle. Note to self. Never argue with Dr. Ibarra about the right of way. In the midst of the urban chaos, a small victory felt monumental. An EDF Special Forces team in Berlin managed to corner a Myriad hover skiff in a narrow alley and disable it with a volley of EMP grenades. The alien vehicle crashed, its crew stunned. Before the Myriad could mount a recovery operation, a heavy-lift Chinook helicopter, a relic by modern standards, swooped in and airlifted the captured prize, spiriting it away to a secure location. The location was the deepest sublevel of the Anvil. Rena Ibarra descended upon the captured skiff with a team of her best engineers. They were armed with plasma cutters, quantum scanners, and a variety of tools that looked suspiciously like repurposed power drills and crowbars. She looked at the sleek alien vehicle not as a weapon of war, but as a treasure chest of dangerous new toys. "Oh, hello, beautiful," she whispered, running a hand over the smooth, unblemished hull. "Look at these lines. No visible propulsion, localized gravity manipulation for sure. And this power signature. So clean." She grinned a wide, slightly unhinged expression. "We're not going to replicate you. We're going to cannibalize you. Your parts are going to teach our ugly machines some beautiful new tricks." She hefted a plasma torch. "General Marin has given me carte blanche and a 12-hour deadline. We are going to have so much fun together." The ground invasion was a catastrophic, humiliating failure. Director Boros's desk was littered with reports of his elite soldiers being defeated by every conceivable form of repurposed civilian technology and illogical tactic. Humiliated and enraged, Boros recalled his surviving ground forces. His new plan was simple, brutal, and in his mind, foolproof. He would pull the entire fleet back to a staging area in the system's asteroid belt. From there, they would commence a systematic orbital bombardment that would scour the planet's surface down to the bedrock. He would crack the planet like a nut. In the Anvil, General Marin watched the Myriad withdraw on the main holographic display. Her officers were celebrating, a cautious wave of relief washing through the command center. Marin saw something different. "They're not retreating," she said, her voice cutting through the chatter. "They're regrouping. They think we're hunkering down for a siege. They think they're safe out there." She brought up a schematic of a heavy-duty asteroid hauler, a ship class known colloquially as an ore breaker. It was ugly, functional, and massive. "Let's show them they're not safe anywhere in our system." A new mission was authorized. Damon, Rena, and a small EDF strike force were dispatched to a mining outpost near Jupiter to commandeer the nearest hauler, the IVS ore breaker. When they arrived, the ship was a hulking, rust-streaked beast. Within hours, it was transformed. Rena and her team worked feverishly, welding salvaged EDF weapon pods onto its frame and, most importantly, installing the strange new systems she had scavenged and hot-wired from the captured Myriad skiff. The ore breaker, a vessel designed for slow, methodical work, was now bristling with jury-rigged weapons and integrated alien technology. It was an ugly, beautiful, terrifying hybrid, a perfect symbol of human ingenuity under pressure. In the silent, chaotic dance of the asteroid belt, the ore breaker was a shark that thought it was a whale. Damon sat in the command chair, which had been designed for a slow, methodical mining captain, not an adrenaline junkie ace pilot. He piloted the massive, unwielding ship with the reckless grace of a fighter jockey, pushing its industrial-grade thrusters to their absolute limits. "This thing handles like a drunken bantha," Damon grunted, wrestling with the controls to dodge a tumbling chunk of iron ore the size of a city block. "It wasn't designed for ballet, Damon." Rayner shot back from her engineering station, a chaotic nest of exposed wiring and glowing alien components. "It was designed to push moons, so push something." They weren't engaging the Myriad warships directly. That would be suicide. Instead, they were playing a deadly game of three-dimensional cosmic billiards. Damon targeted a small Myriad supply frigate, part of the Amalgamate's logistical tail. "Okay, Rena, got a target. Give me the slingshot.
On it.
The Orebreaker's forward magnetic grapples fired, latching onto a nickel-iron asteroid roughly twice the size of the frigate. The ship's engines groaned in protest as Damon fired the rotational thrusters, spinning the massive vessel in its captured asteroid like a cosmic hammer thrower.
Calculating trajectory and release window.
Rena muttered, her eyes glued to a holographic display.
Accounting for Vesta's gravity well and the target's predicted course, release in 3, 2, 1, now!
Damon hit the release. The magnetic locks disengaged, and the asteroid flew free, hurtling silently through the vacuum on a perfectly calculated intercept course. Aboard the Myriad frigate, the bridge crew saw it coming, far too late. Their combat computers, programmed for the predictable vectors of energy weapons and missiles, were utterly incapable of processing the trajectory of a tumbling, irregularly shaped mountain of a rock. The ship's pathetic point defense lasers chipped away at the surface, doing nothing. The impact was not an explosion. It was an annihilation. The frigate simply ceased to exist, absorbed by the sheer kinetic force of the asteroid, which continued on its path, barely impeded.
Scratch one supply ship,
Damon said, grinning.
Who's next?
They stalked the edges of the Myriad fleet for hours, sowing chaos. But the larger warships, the destroyers and cruisers, were too well defended for their crude tactics. They needed to get closer.
General, we can't take on their capital ships with rocks, Damon reported. We need a new angle.
Dr. Ibarra?
Baron's voice inquired calmly over the long-range comm. Rena's grin was audible.
The stealth drive from that skiff was a nightmare to interface with, but I managed to hotwire its power core onto a main grid. It's unstable, draws a ton of energy, and might cause our teeth to vibrate out of our skulls, but it should hide this flying brick long enough for us to deliver a present.
Half an hour later, the Orebreaker ghosted through the darkness, its massive profile hidden by a shimmering, jury-rigged stealth field. They got dangerously close to a Myriad destroyer patrolling the perimeter.
Boarding is too risky,
Rena stated, typing furiously.
Their hulls are too thick and we don't have time. But we don't need to get inside to break their toys.
A single projectile launched from a modified mining charge tube. It was not an explosive, it was a sleek torpedo tipped with a magnetic clamp and packed with Rena's latest invention. It latched onto the destroyer's hull with a quiet thud.
Say hello to the dissonance torpedo,
Rena whispered gleefully. Aboard the destroyer, a low hum began to vibrate through the deck plates. The lights flickered. The ship's command barked an order, but before he could finish, the artificial gravity violently spiked to 5 Gs, pinning the entire crew to the floor. Then it whipped sideways, turning the interior of the ship into a 0G blender filled with unsecured equipment and incapacitated soldiers. The dissonance torpedo was not a weapon of destruction. It was a weapon of chaos. It emitted a powerful, fluctuating resonant frequency specifically tuned to the crystalline structures of the Myriad gravity plating technology. It didn't break the system. It drove it insane. The destroyer, its crew incapacitated and its systems in turmoil, drifted helplessly, a ghost ship in the dark.
One down,
Rena said, already working on the next torpedo.
Many more to go.
Data recovered from the now captured gravity-impaired destroyer was a treasure trove. It revealed the exact location of Director Boros's command ship, the Asset Collector. It was hiding in the shadow of Vesta, the second largest asteroid in the belt. The Myriad had already begun hollowing out the massive rock, turning it into a mobile fortress and staging ground. The Asset Collector itself was a beast. Its shields were orders of magnitude more powerful than any other ship in the fleet, and it was surrounded by a dense, intelligent swarm of thousands of automated defense drones. They moved with a terrifying coordinated grace, an impenetrable wall of steel and plasma. A direct assault was not just suicide, it was statistical nonsense. So, the front door is locked and guarded by 1,000,000 angry robot bees, Damon summarized, looking at the tactical display aboard the Orebreaker. What's the back door? There is no back door, Marin's voice stated from Earth. So, we're gonna have Dr. Ibarra build one, and you, Commander Wells, are going to kick it in. The plan they concocted was, even by their standards, certifiably insane. It relied on perfect timing, technology that was barely theoretical, and a pilot willing to fly directly into the maw of hell. Damon was back in his natural habitat, the cockpit of the XF-99 Spitfire, which had been docked inside the Orebreaker's cavernous cargo bay. He launched into the vacuum, a single, tiny gnat flying towards an apocalyptic beehive. He opened a broad-spectrum channel, aiming his broadcast directly at the drone swarm. "Hey, you tin cans. Your warranty is about to expire. Come and get some." The swarm reacted instantly. Thousands of red lights turned in unison, locking onto his ship. A tidal wave of metal and plasmas surged toward him.
Damon, you have their attention, Raina said, her voice tight with tension. Now dance!
He grinned. "This is my kind of music." Damon led them on a wild, suicidal chase through the densest part of the surrounding asteroid field. This was pure seat-of-your-pants instinctual flying. He slammed the main engines to reverse thrust, the Spitfire groaning under the strain as G-forces shoved him deep into his crash couch. The fighter slid backward through space at 1,000 kilometers per second, engines screaming while the drones, locked into their rigid pursuit logic, overshot him by kilometers. He G-whipped the fighter around a jagged asteroid, using its gravity to pivot. The maneuver slammed him against his restraints, but the rigid myriad formations behind him couldn't compensate. 100 drones smashed into the rock face in a series of silent, brilliant flashes. He then barrel-rolled through a rapidly closing gap between two tumbling mountains, the tips of his wings scraping metal with a shriek that vibrated through his entire frame, while the less agile drones following him were crushed between them. The myriad drone AI was logical, predictive. It couldn't comprehend a pilot who flew with such joyous, chaotic, and utter disregard for his own survival. Damon wasn't just evading them. He was using their own rigid logic against them, turning the swarm into a self-destructing demolition derby. While thousands of drones were busy chasing Damon's light show, Rena unleashed her magnum opus from the relative safety of the Orebreaker. The ship's comm dish, augmented with scavenged myriad tech, began to glow.
Initiating Project Babel, she announced, her eyes wide with manic focus. Let's see how their fancy battle network handles 1,000,000 schizophrenic backseat drivers.
Aboard the asset collector's bridge, Boros watched Damon's single fighter make a mockery of his drone defenses, his rage mounting. Then his tactical display dissolved into pure chaos. It was a data warfare flood. Reina's signal mimic virus, reverse-engineered from the destroyer's comm systems, wasn't trying to break their encryption. It was simply screaming into their network, flooding it with millions of false targeting solutions, contradictory commands, ghost signatures, and panicked fake retreat orders from his own subordinate commanders. Alarms blared for non-existent hull breaches. Friendly ships were suddenly flagged as hostile targets. The flawless tactical map devolved into a strobing, overlapping mess of hostile icons, friendly call signs, and random geometric patterns, rendering it completely useless. Boros' advanced shield systems, unable to process the storm of contradictory threat data, began to flicker and fell erratically. "What's happening?" Boros roared, swatting at a holographic display that now showed nothing but visual noise. Peter stared at his own console, his antennae twitching in terror.
Director, our network, it's insane. It's not broken, it's arguing with itself. Our tactical display is showing every friendly ship as hostile and every hostile signature as an asteroid simultaneously. It's pure information overload.
"That's our window." General Marin's voice was sharp and clear, cutting through the chaos. "All power to the main weapon! Fire on my mark!" On the bridge of the Orebreaker, Rayner rerouted every last joule of power. The ship's lights dimmed and the artificial gravity sagged.
"Diverting energy from the life support, inertial dampeners, and the coffee machine," she yelled. "Especially the coffee machine. This is going to hurt!"
She channeled all of it, along with the stored energy from the alien power core she had scavenged, into the ship's primary tool, the asteroid-cracking mining laser. The weapon fired. This was no clean surgical beam from the Soul Core array. It was a roaring, unstable spear of pure, unrefined industrial power, a barely contained cataclysm. It was the color of a welding arc, and it screamed across space. The beam glanced through a momentary flickering gap in the asset collector's failing shields. It didn't slice through the command ship, it eviscerated it. The beam hit the bow and kept going, gutting the massive vessel from tip to tail, vaporizing the Tektite bridge and Director Boros in a silent, blinding flash of light. For a moment, the flagship just hung there, a glowing line carved through its heart. Then, its power core went critical. The pride of the Myriad amalgamate tore itself apart in a catastrophic, silent explosion that illuminated the entire asteroid belt. The destruction of the asset collector and the death of Director Boros didn't just break the Myriad fleet's morale, it shattered their command structure. The perfectly organized corporate fleet dissolved into a panicked mob. They didn't retreat, they routed. Ships scrambled over each other, thrusters firing wildly, desperate to escape the system of the mad, terrifying Deathworlders who fought with infrastructure, freight trains, and weaponized insanity. Aboard the bridge of the battered but victorious Orebreaker, the human crew watched them go. The lights came back up to full power, and the life support hummed steadily again. Damon, having docked the Spitfire, slumped into his pilot's chair on the bridge, the adrenaline finally starting to fade, leaving a deep, bone-weary exhaustion in its place. "So," he said, cracking a weary grin that didn't quite reach his eyes, you think they received the message?" Rena, already excitedly trying to reassemble a captured Myriad plasma rifle with a screwdriver and a roll of high-tensile utility fabricator tape, grinned back without looking up. "Honestly, I think we might have been a little too subtle." Weeks later, General Lena Marin stood on the observation deck of the newly commissioned orbital defense station Vigilance. Below her, Earth was serene. Outward, a holographic star map showed the known galaxy now with a new, blinking red zone around the Sol system. Humanity was no longer alone, and thanks to the panicked, hysterical broadcast of the retreating Myriad amalgamate, they now had a reputation. An aide approached, holding a data slate. "General, the Solar Mandate is asking for a report. They want to know what our new interstellar diplomatic policy will be now that they know we're here." Marin looked across the deck at Damon and Rena. They stood in front of a whiteboard, arguing playfully over the schematics for a new class of ship, one that combined the overpowered engines of the Spitfire with the gravity-manipulating tech Rena had perfected. "It's simple," the general said. The entire bridge crew turned to look at her. "We're going to send another message." A massive new comms dish, built into the station's superstructure, began to power up with a low hum. Damon Wells, looking rested and impossibly cocky, leaned into a microphone in the comm center. "Let's try this again," he said to the assembled technicians. "We'll broadcast our original message, same audio, same math. But this time, let's send it on all known Myriad emergency and commercial frequencies. Just to make sure they got it." Marin stepped forward, her voice quiet but carrying across the entire room. "One addition, Commander. After the audio, transmit the complete, unredacted battle logs from our defense of Sol. All of it. The Sol Core Strike, the number 19 to Hell, the Maglev, Project Babel, everything." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "Let the voice be the greeting, and the data be the warning." The signal went out once more, carried on waves of energy that would travel for centuries. It was a clear, cheerful, and now utterly terrifying voice, echoing into the newfound silence of space.
Hello? 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 Hello?